County Board of Commissioners to order. We'll stand first for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you, everybody, and welcome to the second board meeting of the month. Today is Tuesday, July 18th. You all received, fellow commissioners, you all received the agenda in your packet, and included in that is the consent agenda. We have the approval of the county board meeting from last month. We have some auditors' warrants and claims, paying bills, approval of human services warrants and claims, also paying bills, cancellation of warrants, and then the approval of an increase to the law enforcement center petty cash funds, all routine stuff. Is there anything anyone wishes to pull from the agenda, consent agenda? Hearing none, I would ask for the approval of the agenda or the consent agenda.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Commissioner Gardner moves on the consent agenda. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, then we'll move on to general business discussions. Administrator Baker.
Good morning, Commissioners. If I may, Mr. Chair, introduce our new Health and Human
Absolutely,
Services
please
Director, Caroline, you may come up. Caroline Kahn just started with the county yesterday, July 17th. Like I said, she'll be our new Health and Human Services Director. We're really excited to have her on board with her human services and public health knowledge, overview knowledge, and then her expertise and professional development and leadership skills. So we're really excited to have her start with the county, and she came back on day 2, so that's really exciting. So if you want to say a few words.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for that.
Take a
kind
few minutes and
introduction.
introduce yourself to us and anybody who may be watching on
On the
TV.
World Wide Web.
Yeah, right.
So, well, good morning. I'm Caroline Kahn, and I am excited about this opportunity to join the Candy Ojai County team. I've had an incredible first day and second morning, getting to know the incredible individuals that are doing the hard work every day here. So I'm really excited to take my experience and my love for this area and play a greater role in the leadership of our health and human services area. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to getting to know and working with you all as we move our county forward. So,
Welcome aboard.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Administrator Baker, you also want to introduce a resolution.
Yeah, so today I'm asking for approval for the Greater Minnesota Legacy Grant for the Prairie Woods Learning Center. I have Ms. Swenson here to answer any questions. She gave a really good overview in the request form. So this is a start to a full process to make Prairie Woods a regional park and have access to legacy funding. So if the resolution is approved, that would allow Prairie Woods to receive more funding and start this process. Ms. Swenson, if I'm missing anything, if you'd like to add, you may.
Nope, just thank you for having Prairie Woods represented today in this Resolution 26. And this would provide us the opportunity for more growth and improvement to serve the residents of Candy Ojai County as well as tourists to our county.
So I do have a couple questions, but I would defer to the rest of the board if they have questions first. Maybe not a couple questions, but, so other than the legacy grants that would be available, what are the other implications about being a regional park versus being an ELC? And will it still be called an ELC?
Yes, we'll still be an ELC. It's just a designation of regional park. And so we'll be included in the regional parks of our area. And there's a lot of partnership that goes along with that and just being in the know and access to grants.
Yeah. And is that pretty far reaching, the grant opportunities?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Any other questions from anybody else?
Mr. Chair, you mentioned regional parks. Is there a designation of different regions? And what region would this then be? Or what region is it then? You're representing our region parks.
We'd be in District 3.
Oh.
So the state is divided into different districts. Another example of
districts as the state.
a regional park in our district would be Robbins Island.
Okay.
And is there any, I don't know, anybody who can answer this, is there any reason why we've never considered this before? Is there any drawbacks to being a regional park, or just hadn't been thought about? Okay, all right. Well, very good. So, Kelsey, you're going to introduce a resolution 2023-26?
Yep, so we're just asking for approval on the resolution today.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution 2023-26.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves on resolution 2023-26. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any discussion? I think this is a good step forward and opens up more opportunities. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, next up on the agenda is the amended, you're going to tell us what SMOC stands for, Fiscal Host Agent Agreement. So Corinne Torkelson, and for the record, you know to,
Good morning. I am Corinne Torkelson. I'm one of the social service supervisors for Candido County Health and Human Services. What I'm doing today is to make an adjustment to the Southwest Adult Mental Health Consortium is joint powers of 18 counties that is looking at the mental health needs of the area, and grants are provided from the state for us to be able to do the work that we do. And back in February, you guys had looked at this contract, and it was for the fiscal host. Des Moines Valley provides our fiscal host for the grants that we received from the state for our consortium work. And what happened is that this is the first time that we're doing a fiscal host agreement. Des Moines Valley has asked for that. Typically, we would just do it as through the joint powers and as an appointment annually. But with the amount of funds that are coming from the state, they're asking for us to do a fiscal host. So that was presented. Jenny Lipper presented that to you guys back in February. What happened is Des Moines Valley wants all 18 counties to sign off on that grant, or on this fiscal host. So that's what was happening in February. What happened is there was a few counties that wanted some language change under the identification piece of it. And so that's what I'm bringing to you today, is a new contract with that improved language and to replace the one that you guys had signed off of back in February, on February 21st.
all right, any questions for Ms. Torkelson? Then I would entertain a motion to approve the amended Fiscal Host Agent Agreement.
Mr. Chair, I so move to amend this agreement and sign it.
Commissioner Berg moves on the amended agreement. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to add on to what Corinne just mentioned. I'm not sure it was even necessary to do this because the 18 County Mental Health Consortium, as part of the joint powers, had the authority to do it. But it was reviewed by Mr. Baker and all the other counties, and the other counties felt more comfortable if everybody signed off on it again. So I recommend we support it, and really nothing's changed per se.
Right.
Basically a formality. All in favor? Did you have a question, Commissioner Gardner? No. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Do you have something for me to sign?
No, Mary will get that to you.
Got
So.
it. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Next up is Tammy Jo here.
Yep. Oh, she was.
Okay. 9:20. Well, we're about 10 minutes ahead of schedule.
Yeah. We've got a slight delay for anybody who's watching as Tammy Jo stepped out for a moment. Yeah.
Oh, well, here's the rest of her gang anyway.
Yep.
Guessing she went to go.
She's herding cats, I think.
There she be.
There she is.
There she is. So we will move on to the agenda item for the proclamation for Supervision Week, an update on legislation and state funding regarding, oh, you got, I think Ace has one in there.
Who does? Oh, sorry.
The staff is trickling in.
Yep.
They are. And now the computer died.
Tammy Jo, for the record, state your name and who you're here to represent.
Good morning. I'm Tammy Jo. I'm the Director of Candy Ojai Community Corrections, and I'm here representing our staff for the proclamation for American Parole and Probation Officer Week. You do have a proclamation in your packets. I'm wondering if you would like me to read the proclamation or if it's something that
Why don't we
you...
go ahead and read it?
Okay, so that's what I need to pull up along with the PowerPoint and if I can pull it up. I'm having trouble here.
Here, do you want this? Actually, I have it.
At some point, I'm going to need the PowerPoint as well.
I'll get it. IT, can you come in here?
I can read the proclamation while we look for that for the PowerPoint
Please
for
do.
later. Thank you. Okay. Pretrial probation and parole supervision week is June 2016 through the 23rd of 2023. So here's the proclamation. Whereas probation and parole is an essential part of the justice system. Whereas probation and parole officers and professionals uphold the law and dignity while recognizing the right of the public to be safeguarded from criminal activity. Whereas probation and parole officers and professionals are responsible for supervising adult and juvenile offenders in the community. Whereas probation and parole officers and professionals are trained professionals who provide services and referrals for offenders, where probation and parole officers and probation professionals work in partnership with community agencies and groups, whereas probation and parole officers and professionals promote prevention, intervention, and advocacy, whereas probation and parole officers and professionals provide services, support, and protection for victims, whereas probation and parole officers and professionals advocate community and restorative justice, whereas probation and parole officers and professionals are a true force for positive change in their communities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Candy Ojai County Board do hereby proclaim June 16th through the 23rd, 2023, as pretrial probation and parole supervision week, and encourage all citizens to honor these probation and parole professionals and to recognize their achievements. Today, July 18th, 2023.
Very good, thank you. I'm going to just correct one little thing. You said June 16th to
Oh, July.
July 16th. So, thank you very much, Tammy Jo.
Right now I have, some of my office was able to attend, not everybody, but I was able to bring some of my probation officers in just to hear the proclamation, and they may stay for part of it. But
Sure.
if you have any questions or anything about our office or anything you want to know, but we have several celebrations planned this week to honor our probation officers and say thank you. And then we're going to continue on doing some team activities later on in the fall.
Very good. Anybody out there wish to come up and introduce yourself or say anything? You weren't expecting this, but
I can introduce them.
Yeah, why don't
who's
you?
here.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I introduce.
raise your hand as she
Yeah.
introduces everybody.
So we have Tony Parada, Crystal Roloffs, Mary Jo DiCatlino, April Jones, Crystal Syringa, I can't always pronounce everybody's names, Jason Denton, Matt Thompson, John, Angie, Elsa is our new intern, and Mel.
Did one sneak in behind you that you didn't see?
Ray Lynn snuck in behind me on the backside.
Well, welcome, everybody, and thanks for all the hard work that you do. And I think the last legislature, and as Tammy's about to allude to, has made things a little, perhaps will make things a little bit easier for the work that all of you do. Anybody else have any comments or questions for the staff, for Tammy?
I just want to say one thing that a lot of people don't really realize what all goes on in the county. And I never did, I knew there were parole officers and stuff, but I didn't realize how big a role they play in the county. And the workload that you guys have is pretty big. It's almost, well, it is too much really. But we have that give and take between the taxpayers and then what we want to give you guys. And so there's often financial constraints to that, but we try to do the best we can to give you guys all the tools you need to work and do your job. So thank you guys.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we proclaim that the pretrial probation and parole supervision week of July 16th and 23rd, 2023, that we approve this.
So Commissioner Berg approves the proclamation. I was expecting that from Commissioner Anderson.
Well, I would like to second it, yes.
Oh, okay.
Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, guys. You're welcome to stick around a little bit if you wish, or if you got work to do, feel free to leave as you see fit. Please proceed. Attorney
Okay,
General.
we will go on and we'll start talking about what's going on in our office now. So as we've talked about, we have a lot of legislative changes that have been going forward. At the last board meeting, Kelsey presented or brought forward the one-pager that was completed by the Association of Minnesota Counties to start explaining some of the mandates. As I've talked to before, and many of you, the public safety bill and many of the other bills that went through this legislation is pretty extensive. We are still going through it, finding line by line how areas that are affected and how it affects our probation and parole office. It's going to be a lot of changes and a heavy lift to make sure that we make it through all of these changes appropriately. It's also probably going to result in a lot of case laws, one of the things that we've figured out as we go forward, because there's so many different adjustments and changes as we go. So as part of that today, I wanted to present to you kind of a review of some of the things our office does, and then talk about what this legislation, kind of a broad overview of where it kind of comes from. And as part of that, reminder that our office is really, really geared, the main goal is long-term community safety through rehabilitation, accountability, and managing our resources. That's the most important thing that we do, is how do we address long-term community safety. We use community values, and community correction services are best. And when we're talking about that, what I'm really talking about is our Community Corrections Act. We're a Community Corrections Act county. And because we provide those services at a local level, it allows us to really include our community values as part of that process. I always bring my mission statement and our vision. I don't need to read it to you because I read it to you every single time, but I always want to remind everybody that that is our goal and our vision, to promote public safety. So, reducing recidivism reduces social and financial costs to our community. That's one of the reasons we talk about long-term community safety instead of short-term community safety. By helping individuals desist from committing crimes, we help our children in our communities, we reduce our jail costs, reduce prison costs, and help people become productive members of society. That is why it's so critical that we address rehabilitation needs and address the long-term community safety. It allows for flexibility in innovative approaches in community corrections through using our community corrections models. And rehabilitation, like I said, is one of the most important things to address the needs of our individuals in our community. And those needs are for the person, their families, and our community that we're trying to address. Rehabilitation is making a difference. When you look at this cycle, what we're really trying to address is identifying the risk and needs and the driver. How do we change that behavior safely in the community? And what I mean by that is, if somebody's high risk, we might have more accountability, we might have more supervision. But if somebody's low risk, we're going to adjust our resources and have lower levels of supervision. We use the risk principle, which means that we're going to put our highest amount of resources on the highest amount of highest risk offenders. We use motivational interviewing as a means to address change. How do we address that internal motivation. And part of that goes to, even though we are a law enforcement agency, telling people what to do isn't usually the best way to make them change their behaviors. We're trying to help them come up with their own intrinsic motivation so that they make that change individually. Even if it is a little bit coerced because they're under supervision, it still is better for them to help identify what that change is. The criminogenic needs, we've talked about that, but that's that weird term that doesn't make a lot of sense to people, but we use a lot, is the idea that if we address the needs that address criminal offending behavior, we can change that criminal offending behavior. If we address needs that don't apply to criminal offending, then it probably belongs in a different agency, right? Our agency is really based on what do we need to do to address criminal offending behavior in the community. And then professional alliance. Now, this is the key point, and I wanted to address this highly, especially during this week. That means, how do we actually make a difference for those individuals? And it is my probation officers that are the ones that do that develop that positive professional relationship with the people they're supervising to help them make that change. If we don't have good probation officers, we don't have good change. It's just a matter of the way things work. So just a little quick, I won't read all of this to you either, but a discussion about what criminogenic needs are. And the top 4 are really the biggest ones that we're trying to address, which is antisocial cognition, antisocial personality, antisocial associates, and family and marital troubles. The reason we really try and address those are the big 4, is what they talk about. If we can change those behaviors or those thought processes, we can almost always reduce recidivism. But those are also the hardest ones to change. And as we've talked about, anytime you address change, if somebody's tried to quit smoking or gone on a diet or started an exercise program, you can imagine how difficult it is to change multiple areas of your life, the way you've grown up, the way you live your life, the friends you have around you, and all of the things. So it's very, very difficult to help individuals make that change stick. Sometimes it involves some relapse and falling back into things that might cause them problems. The 4 bottom ones are substance abuse, employment, education, and leisure. Those are also things that we're trying to address. We also, when we talk about motivational change, one of the first things we do when we meet with an individual is have them look at this and have them pick where they think the first place they can make a change is. Because if we can change one piece, then maybe we can have a snowball effect and start impacting their lives and changing how they behave. Candiota High Community Corrections, we supervise quite a number of clients and cases. This graph will tell you a little bit about that, and just to explain what I mean by clients and offenses. Many individuals have more than one offense that we're supervising at any given time. So having an open case creates more work. If a probationer, somebody on probation has 6 open files, that is a lot more work for my probation officer than somebody who has 1 open file, even though it's one individual person. So that's why we track both cases. But as you can see, it's been a pretty stable, with a few ups and downs, but not real different over the last 10 years and how much we've been supervising. One thing that has changed is the severity level of the types of offenses. And I don't have that on this graph, but I can provide it. It is in our comprehensive plan. Some of the things that we see is, I'll give, for example, the same idea as what Shane's office sees, but even in the last week, we are working on multiple high-level sex offense cases, something that, sometimes it kind of goes in rotations, but right now that's the big thing in our office, of dealing with some pretty severe and significant cases that are going through our court system. Oh, let's see if I can go backwards. Uh-oh. I'm going to have to. 1 second. I hit the button too many times. I also wanted to another part of our program is our community work service programs, where we, individuals in our community, provide community work service to work off their fines, fees, and things that are being done in the community. This program actually does several things. It helps our offenders learn new skills for education, for employment. We do oil changes. It provides them the ability to go out and find jobs in a variety of different ways. We've had individuals doing cement work and being able to go start construction. So the first and foremost is helping them address those cognitive, behavioral interventions through that work project because our crew leaders spend an enormous amount of time with them. The second piece, and learning education and employment skills. But the second piece is they're really giving back to the community. They're doing things in our community and working off those things. So we've done they do a garden every year, and all of that food is donated to the food shelf. We've been developing cabins. We do construction projects across the county. Some of those buckle up signs that you see on the streets, they've done those. Some remodeling and even maintaining of cemeteries in our community. So the list is endless. I can go on and on about how many different things, but these are just some of the ones that I pulled up as pictures of. So now that we did an reminder of what we do in probation, I wanted to talk about the new legislative mandates and the new state funding that's coming through. Our legislative mandates are going to be pretty specific, but at the same time, right now, we're still trying to figure them out. As I said, we don't know exactly what everything means or how we're going to go about it. We have several committees and task forces developing and trying to get organized to try and figure out some of those things. But our legislative mandates right now are going to change our outcome measures and data collection. That's the information that we report to the state about what we're doing. It is really about how much we're looking at what they invested and how do we show that their investment actually made a difference in public safety and the lives of the individuals in our communities. We also are looking at quality assurance models, standards, and fidelity. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, about how we increase that. We're doing statewide requirements for training, coaching, and evidence-based practices, all of the things that kind of we talk about in terms of risk assessment, responsivity, our evidence-based practices that we use in our office. We're looking for client-centered, culturally appropriate, and gender-responsive approaches. And one of the ways that this is really important going forward is on most of these committees, we are looking for individuals with lived experience to take part. And what we mean by that is somebody who's been on probation, somebody who's been to prison, somebody can help us understand from their perspective what worked and what didn't work. One of the big statewide criminal justice committee will have 3 individuals legislatively on it. And we're going to be looking hopefully to find at least one person from our community to be able to help us discuss some of these issues and really tell us what it means to be on probation. We've talked about it. We knew it was coming. Probation fee elimination in 2027. In the meantime, we still have some changes to our probation fees, but we do need to start preparing for what does that mean when we cannot charge those probation fees. Some of the questions that are still hanging out there are things I talked about earlier is what actually constitutes a probation fee? Is it just the supervision fees that we charge, or is it related to other fees, like UA fees or polygraph fees? What types of fees actually fall under this legislation? MMRA is the other thing that a lot of people have heard about. Actually, I think it's MRRA. I'm sorry, I think I put the wrong thing on my slide. And Minnesota Rehabilitation Act is where the commissioner will pull out and say that if somebody is able to complete treatment in the prison system before they come out, they may be able to reduce their sentence in half. Now, this is going to be a significant change for us in terms of how quickly we start supervising individuals on supervised release. We don't know when it's going to actually start, but we will have additional people on our supervised release caseloads so that we will be responsible for supervising. Hopefully, they'll be coming out with more treatment and able to adjust better to the community at that point. It's a really good idea. It just will have an impact on our office. Sir?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead,
I may.
Mr. Gardner.
thank you. Tammy Jo, let's talk about this just to make sure that the people listening here understand what it is that we're talking about here. So right now in Minnesota, if you're imprisoned in the prison system, you can, with good time, serve 2/3 of your sentence, correct?
That is
and then
correct.
the remaining third under supervised
Release.
release. What this does is if they participate in different programs during that time, instead of having to wait until 2/3 of that sentence is completed, they would be released after just half.
That is correct.
Okay, so, but then the idea, as you've alluded to, is that they've gone through some of these programs. Perhaps they've gone through treatment, whatever else it is that their particular program requires. And then presumably when they're coming out, even under release, they're still going to have some of those supports.
Right, and hopefully we'll be able to develop stronger transition programs. You know, and you can see that a lot in terms of coming out of prison is a pretty significant change. As much as everybody wants to come out of prison, right? Prison is in a good place. It creates a lot of change and a lot of trouble, and a lot of times they don't have family members able to support them. They don't have a place to live. We're talking about people that are homeless. They may need chemical dependency treatment if they were not able to, and that's one of the things about MMRA, that they're looking at increasing the amount of chemical dependency options in the prison system, also increasing the amount of cognitive behavioral programs, which is what we do when they come out in the community. So with this program, hopefully, we'll be able to provide those services earlier and help these individuals transition into the community to give them a better shot to reduce that recidivism. It will be an additional supervision in our communities.
Yeah, so it isn't really a get out of jail free card. They have to have performed and done the work in order to qualify for that release.
That is the way it is designed.
Otherwise, they can just serve 2/3 of their sentence, not get in any trouble, not do anything.
Right,
And
because
then come
Minnesota
out,
is a determinate sentencing state, and what that means is that we don't have a parole board. We automatically, my staff actually, when somebody's sentenced, they figure out what that sentence is, and I'll use 18 months as an example, just because it's an easy number. If somebody's sentenced to an 18-month prison sentence, we go in and we look at it, and they say, okay, my staff look at it and say, this is an 18-month prison sentence. If you don't do anything wrong, you will be released at 12 months of that 18 months, serving 2/3 of that time. So what this program would mean would be that if they serve during 9 months that they're serving, if they do treatment options and they do, one, they don't have bad behaviors, and number two, that they participate actively engaged in treatment, that they might be able to be released at that 9-month mark. There's a lot of complicated pieces to it. I mean, not to go too far into detail, one of the problems is a lot of people don't serve that much time. We've talked about it before, that, 96% of the people sent to prison come back out, but a lot of them come back out really quickly. And what we mean by that is they might only have 3 months left to serve on their prison sentence by the time they go in. Those are the individuals that may not have the opportunity still to participate in that treatment. And so we're gonna have to try and still keep trying to figure out, what does that mean? How do we transition? And as you can imagine, if you're addicted, you have criminal behaviors, cognitive thinking distortions, 6 months in prison, probably in a negative environment, is not going to change that. That's where my staff come in and have to come in and start helping them adjust and transition safely back into the community.
Thank you.
Commissioner Berg.
Yes, just a couple comments and questions too. There really is kind of a cost shifting and responsibility shifting to the counties by doing this. I have several questions. One is, if somebody's getting out of prison, they don't necessarily come back to the county that they were sentenced from. They still could be discharged to another county.
There's a lot of complicated rules with that.
Okay, so that's, it gets
But
more and more
most likely,
complicated,
so
yeah.
we're trying to, we try and find the best place for them to come out to. And what we mean by that is where they have support systems, where they're not homeless, where, they have the best chance of being successful. Reality-wise is a lot of these individuals don't have a lot of options. And when there is no other options, the last resort is county of commit, which means that they come back to our county. So you're going to see it in two ways, right? We could see people from other counties being committed from another county coming to our county because it's determined through their release planning that this is the best place for them to be. Or we could have some of our clients going to another county because they have more support systems there. But there are many, many individuals, because they burned their bridges. A lot of times when we think about the fact that they've done all these crimes here, they've also probably burned their bridges with their families. Their families don't want to provide the support for them. They might be afraid to have them in their houses for a variety of different things. And so the idea of where they go is pretty complicated.
And you're going to probably address this later too, but you have some figures on there that there is going to be some funding connected with this. And any ideas that are going to come close to the extra responsibility that our department, your department in the county here is going to have to probably hire staff because it's going to involve many more people and a more complicated plan when they come out.
Yeah.
Are we going to get close to?
So, the amount of money that was assigned to us is, in this legislation, was the best investment the state has made in over 30 years in community corrections. That being said, it is not fully funded, and in a variety of different ways. There's still more work to be done. We have had pretty positive response from the legislature in terms of the fact that adjusting, even in this upcoming year, that they're going to look at getting at that minimum fully funded, where we gave the legislature several dollar amounts and said, okay, this is the minimum amount, and this is where the workload study said we should be. And we were talking between 56 million and 96 million, just to give you an idea. At the 56 million mark, we said that this wouldn't fully fund the system, but it was our minimum to try and cover all the bases of what we had found through a workload study across the state in making it worthwhile. We did not achieve that 56 million, so those dollars were prorated. So it's kind of that catch-22, right? We are super excited because this is the biggest investment we've ever seen. And it's the first time we've ever seen mandates come out that are funded at this level. Really, usually we see state mandates say, oh, you have to do this, but they don't give us any money to do it. This is the first time they've set mandates and they gave us some dollars to start adjusting for it. But we're not done yet. So it's kind of a little bit of both. Back to the MRRA, part of that is justice reinvestment, that they're saying that, if we save money by not having people in the prison system, they're going to reinvest those dollars into treatment funding, victim services, and different things, because it's very costly having people in prison. And if we can reduce some of that in a safe manner and then reinvest those dollars into treatment options is the goal.
So, other questions? On a related note, as they distributed the funds, or as you find out, I think I'm seeing 620,000 in 2024, it's probably based on population?
So it's actually based on several different things. It's a single funding formula. Part of it is how many felony offenders we have in our state, or in our county, how many gross misdemeanor offenders we're supervising, and that's part of the work that still has to be done by the Criminal Justice Advisory Council, is making a determination of how we're going to, going forward, create that formula in a fair manner. And what we mean by that is there's a lot of things related to supervision that can affect that one way or the other. And we don't want this manipulated. And so there's some things to be determined, but basically it's based on how many people we supervise. We went through and did a workload study that determined how much man hours and staff hours and evidence-based practices it takes to actually do effective supervision. And then we backdated that to, okay, you have this many people under supervision, this is how those dollars are prorated.
And have you done an estimate on how many individuals the county will be dealing with that are affected by this, affected by the get out at 50% of their?
We don't know. So that's all yet to be determined. So I don't know how many will qualify at the prison system. They are working very, very busy trying to get some of that. All we know is the general idea of it. We don't have an idea of what that means.
And then kind of related is, so the cannabis legislation is going to expunge records. And I
Yes.
would assume that is going to immediately release, if someone is on probation simply because of cannabis, they would immediately no longer be under supervision.
So that's actually when we go down a little bit further on this slide even,
Okay.
is the idea of sentencing guidelines and expungements is on that slide as I
Okay.
was talking about.
I'll let you get to that.
No, and I'll talk about it right now. And part of that problem is not only are there, I don't know if we'll see as much as an immediate release from probation supervision, is where we're going to see a very complicated change in our system, is we as probation and parole, we also handle sentencing and pre-sentence investigations and making sentencing recommendations and going into sentencing guidelines and making the determination on criminal histories. That cannabis legislation actually is way more complicated than you can ever imagine, because it's not just the people who are on supervision for cannabis that we have to look at expungements. There's a committee looking at those, but we also have to look at individuals that may have changed their sentence because they had a criminal history of cannabis on the background, or we have to look at, was there probation violation on cannabis? Our pre-sentence investigation unit is going to have to adjust and be working so crazy hard over the next year or two. It's going to be trying to figure out what all these means. We have been meeting with County Attorney Baker, trying to discuss some of these things in detail. There's a lot of people across the state that we just don't know how all of this is going to be affected. And one of the things is that, just like almost all legislation, it might seem like a good idea over here, but until you get into the weeds, it creates so many different complicated things that it's going to be pretty difficult for us to even know what they mean at this point.
One question.
Commissioner.
You talked about probation fees will be eliminated in 2027. Do you know the dollar amount that is right now about per year? Or?
In our county, we were asked this at the legislature, by the way, and this also was, it's like everything's way more complicated than it seems. I will tell you in the past that we collected about $250,000 a year in fees. The last couple of years, we have not been, since COVID and everything else, so now we're looking at probably about $110,000, $120,000. But in my office, that would be at least one probation officer role, if we don't backfill those dollars somehow. So paying attention to how those fees impact things is pretty important.
Okay.
And just so you know, part of the legislation means that we have to address people who can't afford to pay their fees starting August 1st, and it's changed kind of there's a couple different small details that are complicated that I'm not going to get into, but I tell you it's complicated for our office. But one of the things, this is one of the areas we've been way ahead of the game because of our community work service crews and how much they do. Since I came here 5 years ago, we have authorized anybody who says they are unable to pay their fees, we've authorized for them to work off those fees at our community work service site. And we do that because that way I don't want to go in and try and figure out, is this person indigent or they are not, right? We allow them that opportunity and then they can work off the fees.
Are you concerned that now that they don't have to pay the fees, that they will not be interested in doing the community work service?
So we do community work service for so many different things. It could be fines, it could be just straight ordered community work service. There is some components of them doing their fees there, but no, I mean, I think it'll still be okay.
All right. You have
Okay,
more to
I'll keep going then. Workload study. So that's what we talked about is last year, as part of our advisory board, we conducted a statewide workload study, and that was really the basis of where this funding formula came from. The reality of it is we learned a lot in that workload study, and we're going to have to as part of this legislation, we're going to redo it in 2 years, change it around a little bit to make sure that we capture more of the data we're looking for, and then it'll be redone every 5 years. The purpose of this is so that our funding formula is not stagnant. One of the problems that we had is when our original funding formula was created in 1976, there was no mechanism to change it or to increase it, and it created a lot of problems across how we were funded. Now we will do a workload study across the state to really see how much that impacts our offices every 5 years. It's a lot of work to do a workload study across the state, and it creates we have to do a lot of different pieces and components, so I included that. So the new state funding, it's what we talked about. It's exactly what we wanted. It's single funding that's equitable and transparent across the state. Every county has the exact same mandates and funding formula, whether they're DOC, CPO, and CCA. One of the most exciting things is yesterday I was in a meeting actually we had our closure meeting about the committee that created the single funding formula. And one of the things we talked about is for the first time since 1970s, we are all working together, all three delivery system, and we continue to work together, DOC, CCA, and CPO. In the past, we were always fighting for the same dollar, and even though we all had the same mission, we were all trying to everybody was trying to snatch up the same dollar, and it was a little difficult. Now we're across the board. We have our own philosophies and mission statements. We do our own community supervision in our own ways, but we're not fighting anymore. And it's kind of an exciting change having that across the state. It's prorated, highest increase in probation funding, like I said. We have, there's also additional dollars that they'd asked for at the state level of 6 evidence-based practices coordinators for DOC. One of the things is those will also cover the prison system. So just so you know, that's outside of our dollar amount, but that actually 6 evidence-based coordinators for the entire state and the prisons isn't going to get us very far, but at least it's a start. So then the next piece of this is the state funding. And I just use these last couple of years as an example. In 2020, our funding here for community corrections from the state was $785,000. We have been fighting for this formula for a long time and asking for funds. In 2021, we had a small increase of $24,000. So our funding was $810,000. Now this funding formula puts us in a position of kind of going forward. It'll all be based on how many people we supervise and the actual workload. So it will change, but we're hoping to have it change on a 5-year rotation. So like we use an average, so we don't see big swings. One of the concerns I have is I don't want to see a big swing because we had some changeover. But in 2023, we have the $310,000 increase, and that's because our funding formula started July 1st because it's on the state fiscal funding. So we actually will see that increase coming into this year. And so we have some things that we're going to be looking at doing just this year alone. It's going to be a quick turnaround. And then in 2024, we'll see the full $620,000 increase in our budget. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is, again, a reminder of the new mandates. As part of these are mandated things that we will have to do. We don't have know exactly what it all entails because some of this is a moving target. But at the end of 2024, we're going to have to report what we did with these dollars. So we can't wait till the end of 2024. We have to start moving on these things now. In some of the things we'll be reporting on are recidivism data, but that takes a couple years. So in the first couple things they're talking about is how many staff did we add? What are our caseload numbers? What types of programs did we add? What did we do to show that we're making a difference with these dollars? At the same time, Candy-Ojai County is one of the counties in our state that has invested above and beyond what many other counties have. So that's one of the things I wanted to make sure that we address, the fact that we here at Candy-Ojai County have been ahead of the game a little bit. Our probation caseload sizes in the last couple of years have been manageable. We've been able to reduce them using evidence-based practices. And really what I'm looking at in spending these dollars is to address the outcome measures and our quality assurance models, more so than actually adding probation officers at this time. We may have to in the future, but I really want to look at how do we grow intentionally. We do a great job with our evidence-based practices, our motivational interviewing, and those types of things. But like everybody, we really need to really build on that and have annual refresher trainings, do things internally with communities of practice, have trainers in our office, and have supervision. As we've talked about before, right now, our supervision is, it's a lot of supervision for me and one other person to do, right? So we're looking at trying to see how do we build that model so that we provide really, really good coaching and supervision to our staff as we provide the evidence-based practices to the individuals in our community. So that's where I'm kind of concentrating on the standards, the fidelity, the quality assurance. How do we address that, the statutory requirements of the evidence-based practices and the sentencing guidelines. So my proposal is really to add a deputy director position, another lead probation officer. We also, you'll see here, I have a clerk, but I will tell you, so in our office, we have 2 support staff. Most probation offices carry 1 support staff to 4 probation officers. I don't even come close to that. So I do want to give a little bit of a break, especially with the outcome measures that are going to be required. coming forward and the data collection. And then later in 2024, adding another associate probation officer. The cost for that would be around $470,000 next year, whereas we said that the new mandates are coming in at $620,000. Part of that would offset some of the other costs that have increased within our department or in the county, is where I'm thinking right now. So this is actually just an org chart that just to kind of show you how this would work, providing some supervision. And one of the reasons is like talking about the fact that really that means if we have 2 deputy directors, they would still have about 14 staff underneath them in our office, showing a little bit of how that direct reports would work and how we could provide better coaching and training in our department. This also may help a little bit with recruitment and retention. I am extremely lucky to have an enormous amount of highly skilled, experienced probation officers in my office. We are going to see a mass hiring across the state. I'm just telling, because everybody got the same money we did. For example, I know from my meeting yesterday that Scott County is looking to approve 10 more probation officers today, is what was going to the board. I know some other counties have even been trying to hire in the last couple months, and I'll tell you 6W has had 2 open positions for 4 months, and they haven't even had a single applicant. So we're going to see some movement. It's important for us to retain the people that we have here and hopefully provide them with, after 25 years, I have a large group of probation officers that have been here for over 20 years, some promotional opportunities within our agency that they haven't had in the past. So, any questions about my proposal and then I will talk a little bit about some of the future things going forward.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this may be a question that Administrator Baker maybe wants to take. But in terms of the proposal, we're not being asked to do anything with that today, correct? That's going to be part of our budgeting process as we go along. We can expect this probably sometime this fall.
Yeah.
Yes, so today is just an overview of what is being presented, along with the road and bridge presentation as well. At the August 15th board meeting, that's when we'll go into detail of where we're at with the preliminary levy, where we're at with the additional FTEs that we're recommending for approval for the 2024 budget.
Okay, thank you.
Anything? Okay, I'll just talk a little bit about the future stuff then, about some of these other things as we go. Like I said, there's a lot, this is a moving target. We have a lot of stuff going on at the state level. So we have the first thing is the Criminal Justice Advisory Committee, and that's where we're, like I talked about, we're gonna have, it's mandated for 19 individuals to be appointed. I have been appointed to that committee so far, but there's there's 2 CCA directors, and I will be one of them on that committee. We will be looking at what those outcomes mean, what those standards should be, how we're going to report them, and how we're going to train our staff to achieve the quality assurance and the fidelity. This is where we have the people with lived experience on this committee. We have victims, and we also have tribal liaisons and multiple different people from around the state to help us kind of really re-look at and develop what does it mean to really provide good service to the state of Minnesota. Comprehensive plan requirements are going to change, and that's what we provide is a comprehensive plan of what we're doing in our county under community corrections. Now, actually, every county, DOC, county probation offices, and Community Corrections Act counties will all provide a comprehensive plan to their boards. So that'll be a big change that people have seen. But we don't know what those requirements are going to be yet. That'll be another, at some point, determined. The Minnesota Rehabilitation and Reinvestment Act we've already talked about. We also have the Council of State Governments is involved with a technical assistance grant, and we have multiple committees working on this as well to develop a statewide risk assessment tool to help determine how we can move people between counties using a validated risk assessment tool and what that means for our state or individual counties, including performance indicators. What does it mean to be successful in probation? What sanctions should be used? And what incentives can we find across the state? We have to design and implement that workload study. We have to address the elimination of the fees by 2027. We are hoping to get a fully funded appropriation in the future, but we've made a really good start. And then one thing that I also forgot to mention on here on the legislative committee is we're talking about recruitment and retention. This is going to be a big piece of how do we go forward, because if we can't find good probation officers, we're not going to actually be able to move forward on a lot of our plans. One of those other pieces that we'll be talking about more and more at the legislature is how do we provide probation officers with an adequate retirement plan? One of the things that kind of weird happened for probation officers in the world is at one point we had the rule of 90, which meant that you could retire and have different things. That went away. Well, now we don't have actually any different retirement plans, so I could have a probation officer at 65 going out and doing home visits and arrests. So that's one of the things, also encouraging retention, because young people, they pay attention to that. I wasn't that smart growing up. I didn't pay attention to the retirement plan. But our new young probation officers are, and that's something that we need to look at if we really want to encourage people to go into this field. Okay, so we're looking to invest in our community corrections, and how do we make that work best for our community?
Commissioner Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, thank you again. We thanked you in the past about all your advocacy work on making this happen and making sure the funding's coming out. And it was really exciting to see this coming to this point. As a board, our responsibility is, of course, the safety of our people and our community, but also the success of the people coming out of the prisons and the jail, and successful probation, and they don't repeat themselves. And make them tax-paying, working people in our community. And we have had a lot of success. Both Mr. Chair, Commissioner Emdek, and myself are serving on the advisory committee for the Kaneohe County Corrections Department. And we hear of a lot of successes. And the community doesn't always hear of those. And I want to thank you for that. But we do have to address the needs for staff and make sure that this is done correctly. And it sounds like you're going down the right track. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, and perhaps you don't, maybe it's more rhetorical. Do you know about the fulfillment of those advisory task force committees that AMC put out? Because the deadline to apply was July 10th.
I will know Julie Ring from AMC actually talked about that in our meeting yesterday. I don't know who the three that are appointed are. She did say it was super crazy, well, very encouraging that they had more people apply than they ever have for their role on that position. And she said it's kind of a bummer because they have to turn some people down. But at the same time, having county commissioners so actively engaged in this process has been amazing. And, you know, the county commissioners that participated in the single funding formula were very valuable, and so hopefully we'll continue to see how that affects people. I know they wanted to make sure that they had rural and metro and some diversity even across the county commissioners being appointed.
And maybe some of you have applied for that committee, and there was other committees, but I'm just curious generally whether they were getting pretty good.
There was a very good turnout is what I understood. Actually, I
your
think she may
committee
have
and
even
maybe
said
the other
40
ones too.
commissioners maybe have applied, but there was only 3 slots. So it was a lot, generated a lot of interest. And that in itself, I think, is exciting that people are paying attention, that this is important.
It's encouraging. All right. I want to go back, unless you still have more to. I want
Whatever.
to go back to the question I had about the expungements.
Oh, okay.
So, and I imagine these are some of the details that need to be worked out. Maybe Shane can answer some of those. But so technically, prior to the cannabis law, if you violated your probation, that was a new violation. Are they going to be expunged as well? Or are you still on probation because you had a violation while it was illegal to have cannabis?
That is one of those complicated things that we have to look at across the board. And also one of the things is, so right now, this is why it gets so extremely complicated, right? when you're on probation, it says no mood altering substances. Even though alcohol is an illegal substance, most of the individuals on probation are not allowed to drink as well. So there's some question on where does that fall in line. Our goal in probation of saying no mood altering substances isn't to cause people to not have rights or whatever. It's because people make bad choices when they use. It's just, it's part of the process. If a lot of people, all of us included, but sometimes more so with people that are on probation, they make bad choices when they're drinking alcohol or using drugs or smoking marijuana. And our goal, plus, if they're not clear in their head, it's really hard to help them understand cognitive behavioral thinking. If somebody is high on marijuana, whether or not it's legal or not, that makes our treatment process difficult. And so under our view, it is still a mood-altering substance that we don't allow people to use while they're on probation, because it's just too hard to get them to think clearly then.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you for that update, and I'm sure there'll be more for us going forward.
Thank you.
And I'm going to take let's take a 5-minute break here. I know Ace had some PowerPoint or something to present. He probably has to reload it, so let's recess for 5 minutes. Convene the board of the Kaneohe County Board of Commissioners. Next up on our agenda is a pilot project briefing for Minnesota Weather Gap presentation. Ace and Stephanie are, I don't know who's going to present here. I assume Ace, you did all the heavy lifting with the PowerPoint. Come on forward.
All right. Good morning. I'm Ace Bonema, Deputy Emergency Management Director with Kaneohe County. We want to talk about what a weather radar gap is. First of all, the gaps are areas of missing storm coverage and areas further away from radars. They lose data from the low level below the storm, and then as they reach out, as you'll see here in a little bit, they lose resolution in that radar beam. So in general, areas near the radar have a better picture for us. So why is this important? As you'll recall, last year on May 12, we lost a hero, Ryan Erickson, with the Blunkiest Fire Department. He died when a grain bin crushed him while he was leaving his farm site to go weather spotting. This really fired me up personally to try and make sure that something like this doesn't happen again, at least in our county. We rely on our storm spotters to primarily emergency service personnel in Kaneohe County to help us paint a better picture for the National Weather Service so that we can better warn the residents and guests of Kaneohe County. This image shows the coverage of the large S-band radars that the National Weather Service uses. And hopefully you can see on the key on the lower left there, it shows the coverage. The yellow is the best, showing 4,000 feet and above, what's in weather starting 4,000 feet and above. The orange, 6,000 feet and above, and the light blue showing 10,000 feet and above. The Weather Service has a large number of those radars across the country, but when you look at their radars, what they're showing or not showing, we know we can do better. So on the left is that 10,000 feet and above, but on the right is the 3,000 feet and above. So it starts to, you can see those gaps. Our closest radar is in Chanhassen by the Twin Cities. And you can see the farther away you are from the radar, the more weather falls into that gap due to the curvature of the earth and the distance and the angle that the radars are pointed. So this view was taken back in February. If you guys remember February, we had a little bit of snow. Yeah, and on this day, it looked like much of Minnesota, central Minnesota is clear. But at the time of this image, many towns were experiencing snow at a rate of over an inch an hour. So this chart, I believe we received from the DNR, or the Forest Service, shows yearly precipitation based on radar. And I'm not sure who's using this chart or data, but I don't know if there's funding involved or whatever. But I hope they're realizing that when you put in the radars, you can see exactly where those gaps are. Okay. So we look at we showed the national radar coverage map earlier, and this is what it means for Minnesota. The radar in the east part of Kaneohe County, it starts picking things up between 3,000 to 6,000 feet. As we go further west, like in Sunburg, it's not picking things up until 6,000 feet or higher in the gray area there. So we created a work group under the Association of Minnesota Emergency Managers. Our goal is to educate about this gap, find ways to fill the gap, and provide better information for the public. Something we're excited about is a public-private pilot project that both Kaneohe County and Grant County are working on. We're working with a company called Climavision, who's installing gap-filling radars across the country. They make their money selling data to news agencies, farmers, businesses, hopefully software app companies. And we're looking to install one of their radars later this fall. By working with them to find a location for their radar, we would receive some licenses free for public safety to use, so there's going to be no cost for the county in this. You can see on, this is a kind of an example of what the smaller radar, the X-band they call it, would look like on a water tower. You can see on this image, the image on the left is a typical what the National Weather Service radar is showing, and on the right is a Climavision radar. So same picture, same time, of the storm. And you can see that J hook starting there, showing where the tornado activity is. So the closer these radars are and the better detail, we can get better information to our spotters, hopefully getting our spotters out more in time, and keeping what happened to Ryan from happening again. So I could go on and on about radars, but you've had a busy day, so I'm just here's a good time to thank you for your time and ask you if you have any questions.
Thank you. I can hear the passion in this. I can hear it in your voice, so thanks for that. Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ace, if you can go back one slide, you mentioned the J hook, and just for those of us who are kind of uninformed, talk to us a little bit about what it is that we're actually seeing here.
Well, so this, and I am no radar expert by any means, and fortunately with Climavision, we are going to get some more radar training and stuff, and hopefully our 911 dispatchers and stuff too, so we can have a better idea. We're actually meeting with the National Weather Service, some of their meteorologists tomorrow, so that we can send these images as we're getting them, or they can be seeing them live as well, so they have more tools in their toolbox. But in this case, this hook there is indicating the strong rotation, so it's kind of indicating to them that this area would be where a tornado is. And if you're looking on the other image, you really, they're having a lot of work to try and pull that out.
Okay, yep, and that makes sense, but I just didn't know which portion of the storm it was.
Yeah,
that we were
so
actually
here's where the
talking
rotation
about.
is. So in my mind, this is the area where we would be really concerned about setting off sirens, that type of thing.
Yep, absolutely. All right,
Because
thank
of the
you.
normal direction of the movement of those funnel systems. Commissioner Anderson?
Yeah, so I was just kind of curious. This radar system, is that what they use in the metro, same type of thing, or is it a step up, step down? How?
So the radar system that they're using, the metro is covered by the state S-band. So on the map here, you'll see that this is the center of the, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but that dot there is Chanhassen. So that's where that S-band is. So they're getting the good coverage from the metro one. One thing that I found interesting, that as we set up this group and we're trying to get people to come to the table and help us with this, Eric Waggy, the Hennepin County Emergency Manager, is coming to a lot of our meetings, and he's really on board, because even though they have what would be the Cadillac of radars, he's seeing that this may give them another 15, 20 minutes of notice. So he's seeing that whatever we're doing is going to help them as well. And there's different ways that we can accomplish this. One of the things with this pilot project is this smaller X-band radar that you need a lot of them all over. The state is also, and our committee is trying to look at what's called a C-band, and we would only need 6 of them, and they're not the Cadillac, but they're better than the smaller ones that we would need all over. There's a pretty big price tag on that, $14 million for the state of Minnesota if we want to fill that gap. But our thing is, we don't care how many. If you got 5 or 1,000, it's going to help fill the gap. And whether it's S-band or C-band or X-band, it's more eyes on the storm. And so, and it's also looking at the storm from different angles so we can get better data. We also have been working with USpatial, the University of Minnesota Duluth, and they've been helping us tie actual data so that we can see, and I can pull up some of those maps as well. We can see, who's being affected population-based, how many tornadoes are falling in this gap, where the disaster declarations for agriculture are, and it's kind of amazing that you can just see that there's this whole path that's being missed. So now, instead of just saying, since I started, we've heard that there's a gap, but now it's like, let's tie this gap to data, and let's use that data to our advantage.
Mm-hmm. And then would this be one reason why it always seems like when I watch the weather, they always kind of skip over west central Minnesota and they go right to the metro area? Is it just because they have better data there and that they have more to talk about, do you think? Or?
I believe that is the case. I did have a clip. I couldn't play the audio, but they actually are showing, and I think it was in your packet that was sent out earlier, but it does show that weather gap and why they're not seeing all that data.
Okay. All right. So
And,
maybe they'll talk about us a little more if we do have something. And will it be shared with the weather I mean, will it be widely
That
available
would
to
be
the public?
that would be the goal. However, ClimaVision, for example, if we got the C-band radars or something, those would probably be shared because it would be a government thing. But then we also have to pay maintenance on and stuff. With ClimaVision, they're paying the maintenance. We're not having to come back and pay those yearly bills and stuff. But then they need to make their money so they can sell it to the WCCOs or whatever like that. An interesting thing that I also found was we've been working a lot with Chris Mueller, the Emergency Management Director in Beltrami County up at Bemidji. And he'll have people, they're looking at their phones and oh, that storm, no, it's dying down. And then all of a sudden the storm starts back up again. It's like, nope, you're just in the gap. That storm goes right through that gap between the Mayville in North Dakota radar and the Duluth radar. So.
Can I
Commissioner-
say something?
Commissioner Berg.
Oh, you're talking about filling the gaps too, and it's all about saving lives. And as you initially started talking about, we have weather spotters, we have to get out there and so forth. This would help us then getting them out sooner if needed, or safely get them out there. Am I correct?
Right. So when we're seeing those storms come in, it seems like a lot of times we'll get a call from Chanhassen saying, send your spotters out. And that's when the storm is now in Atwater. And it's like, it's finally hitting their radar. So it's very frustrating to us. It's like, why aren't we getting the notice? And they understand that there's a gap too, and they have, funding issues. They can't just put radars in to fill, and that we could talk a day and a half about all the issues there. But yeah, having those spotters is still, and once we have the radars, spotters, eyes on the ground are still going to be your main thing. But to be able to give them a better picture of, hey, we need to get out ahead of this, or here's where the winds are starting. And so it would just give them more time to get in place.
Stephanie.
I'd just like to say, one of the mandates from FEMA is that we work on equitability in our emergency planning and response. And I see this as a huge example of how rural, just because we're not the population centers, we should still have the same life-saving capacities. And so when you look at Candioi County up there, we're trying to see what's coming from the west and southwest of us most of the time. And that's definitely, they're not able to see what they need to see because the tornadoes, the damaging winds, and the snowstorms are all at those lower levels. And I know we all kind of had some experiences through the Christmas Eve blizzard. Remember that one? We had people driving out from the city saying, well, it just didn't look that bad. I checked the radar, it just didn't look that bad. So this is one way where we're trying to say, not just for Candioi County, but let's all work together with our peers to just have better coverage for the whole state.
Yeah, it looks to me, when you look at the map, there should be another one at about Browns Valley. There's a big gap in the radars. You talked about Mayville. It looks like there's one up at Duluth, Chanhassen.
Yeah, so this kite, I call it, or they call it the diamond or whatever. So that's coverage, there's no coverage below 10,000 feet there. So that's where that Grant County one and those smaller radars that we're talking about a range of about 60 miles. So some of those are going to fill that kite. With our pilot project, we're going to get the data for free for working with the company and working with the vendors on where to place the radars and stuff. Our neighbors, everybody in our region, and then some of the regions that are also touching us, Renville County, Chippewa County, they will be able to get a 12-month trial period where they can actually see the radar, see the data. Our hope is to find somebody at the state level, with MnDOT or something, that would be able to work with ClimaVision and be willing to say, yeah, we need this. One area that's shown a lot of interest is Minnesota Avionics, the pilots and stuff. And if they're willing to help pay for the subscriptions and make this a public thing, then everybody would be able to get that data quicker.
And by hosting, am I understanding that if we host one of the sites, then basically our subscription will be covered?
Right. So, for example, if we put this on top of the roof of the Health and Human Services building And we said, you can put your golf ball on top of our roof. In exchange for that, we would get so many licenses, if we need 40 for public safety or whatever, that would kind of be, instead of paying rent, they're paying us in free use of the system.
And have you identified that location in Kaneohe County and that structure and for which it would be positioned?
We are working on it, and it actually for us may end up to be in the north part of Renville County, but we've worked with Climavision and they've said that we've done enough homework that they're going to still include us regardless if so it's probably going to be a win for us and a win for Renville. There's so many win-wins that we can do in this situation. So.
Oh, very good.
Mr. Chair?
I'll let Dale go
I'm
first.
sorry.
I just think this is a necessity to me. I mean, we just had an experience in Belgrade last week, and we were going to Swift Falls, and it was a beautiful sunny afternoon, a couple little light clouds in the sky, and a half an hour later, we find out the city of Belgrade is bombarded with huge hail. And there was really nothing on the radar that really indicated that. So, I mean, I think the technology that people look at in today's world, we're all grabbing our phones and looking at that phone. If it's not on our phone, we're not thinking
Yeah,
it's
you
there.
just assume that it's right,
So I think this is more of a necessity than a convenience. So I really appreciate the work you've done. I think this is a great thing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Berg.
Would you please repeat if you already said it? Was there a time frame? What's your guesstimate that we might be able to see something happen?
They are looking at installing the radars. We've kind of been in a race with Grant County on, we want to go first, but
Yes.
right now they're a step ahead of us because we had some of our locations that didn't meet the criteria. We had the blessing, we were going to put it on the Princeburg water tower, and then it turned out that the water tower didn't pass the wind, would it need more strength because of the age of the tower. You're talking about 5,000-pound golf ball that they're putting on top of this thing. So they're a little bit ahead of us, but we're still on track for either August or September of installing. So that would give us hopefully this winter for sure, and then next storm season we're really looking forward to. I can't wait to come back and say, here's a picture of what we were seeing before on their radar, and here's a picture of what we're seeing now.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I'm also quite sure Mr. Odens would be happy to have that information available to
That
him.
we're not sharing with him, no.
All right, if there's nothing else, thank you very much for that interesting presentation, and we'll look forward to your next one.
Thank you.
All right, so now we have a road and bridge construction update from Mr. Odens.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm Mel Odens, Public Works Director. And you thought that was interesting, we're going to talk dirt. So the fundamental reason that we do 3 to 4 road and bridge meetings a year, the one we do at this time of year would be to get a blessing, if you will, to move forward with next year's construction. And so I realize the budget's not approved until later, but there's a lot of soft work that we need to do in terms of soil borings, open houses, SHPO work, wetland work. And so we just want to make sure we're on the right track, because some of this work's going to need to get, started with letters and agency coordination. So there's really 4 topics I'm going to look at. I'm going to give you an overview of this year's work, just where we are. Next year's work, which I would like some sort of, looks good. I've got some equipment discussion that it would be, the reason that it's on there is because it's changing what we approved in the 2020 last year's budget to what we actually would propose to purchase. And then the last thing is kind of a housekeeping thing on the Wilmer Y, the agencies on a settlement agreement. So those are the 4 main things. And I think what I want to do, if we could do the overhead, that would be good. I got backup here in case I misspeak. Right? All right. We don't need to go into detail here, but I do want to just give you a brief overview. We have a pretty large program this year. We don't have everything. We just had 3 more lettings, electronic lettings this morning, and that's why Jeremy's here a little late, and we'll update that. The 3 lettings we had this morning was the Green Lake Trail, North Shore Drive, the Eagle Creek, one by the golf course over here, and then the County Road 1 bridge down by the beet piler in south of 23. All right, so what we got is we still have this year, we've got the ones that are circled are completed or started. The ones that aren't are still going to be constructed. They're let but not worked on. And so County Road 44, County Road 119 are going to get started here probably next week? 119 this morning. This morning. There we go. And then the one in New London is going to get started with a September, October completion. That was a municipal agreement with the City of New London. That's our municipal state aid. County Road 1 is, if you go down to number 7, it's County Road 1. It's going to be the bituminous surfacing. And as you go down, you can maybe just read it on your own, but is there any questions about this year's work? It's going reasonably well. We got a little bit of a late start, but that's just where we are.
Well, certainly should have been for the grading work, at least should have been a great year. We could use the rain, but but the benefit is that they've been able to keep working. So it should be on good schedule.
Right, ironically, what's interesting is that contractors are almost actually wanting a little rain for soil settlement and stability, and sometimes a good moisture, it just locks up all your binders and it actually sets it up better. Because they're having to add water. I mean, there's no question.
Yeah.
So, all right, next year's work, 2024. Let's go up the upper right-hand part of here. It's a $20 million construction. That $20 million represents what we intend to get done next year. The actual funding budget that's going to be in your packet's going to be about $24 million, but we know that the 55 overpass is a project that could be a 2-year project. So we can talk 20 million or 24 point whatever million, but that's the overall scope. Reconstruction is going to be down about 3 miles this year. Our prices are going through the roof. We had $1 million to do a mile, and we're at 1.6 million to do it this year. So we got to scale that back just a little bit. It's not good for the system, but we're going to try and offset that a little bit with bituminous paving. We're doing 18 miles, and our goal is to do between 15 and 20. So we're right in that goal. Crack sealing's 35 miles, striping's 250. Maybe what I ought to do here is maybe the biggest project we're going to be starting is we're going to be doing County Road 7, which is from Highway 40 to Highway 7. It's a pretty popular route. It's a major collector for us. Then the other one is our goal is to get started on the County Road 55 bridge overpass. That would connect the interchange on the southwest part of town north up to be the westerly bypass. Now, the only caveat to that is that we just got the grant for the rail crossing elimination, and they did say it could take up to a year to actually get the grant because there's so many criteria. You got to submit forms and attachments and exhibits and just processes.
So I think it's common to borrow from one fund to go ahead and get it started. Does the federal project allow that as well?
Well, we do.
You said if we don't get the funds till next year.
No. The funds is not an issue.
Okay.
The funding's not an issue. The actual, there's processes that have to happen to probably sign the final grant agreement. There's exhibits and
we don't want to
forms.
start the construction till we have that final.
Oh, correct. You wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. And so the FRA has contacted me. Actually, they were going to try and set up a kickoff meeting for in the next few weeks. They haven't confirmed a date yet. So we will know a lot more when that happens. But with all that being said, that would be probably our largest project for construction. Maybe the next highlight would be next year is the local option sales tax for, I don't know if you want to call it, but focusing on the city of Wilmer work, and that's always been the plan. And so we would do County Road 5 across the old airport. We would do Wilmer Avenue from County Road 5 easterly over to Cashwise. And then we would do 7th Street from the fairgrounds up to Wilmer Avenue. So that would be our goal. Local option sales tax within the city of Wilmer.
Plus the bridge,
What's that?
plus the County Road 555 was part of the local option sales tax too.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yep.
But I mean, for the paving. Yep. And then the next one is, we would also do County Road 9 past the high school. You might realize that road takes a lot of traffic, and it got a little rough. We did a little patching up there, and it's still a little rough considering we're trying to keep our major arterials in good condition for commerce. One of the ones that I do want to point out is on County Road 4 up here. What we did do, and I'm going to recommend this to the board, is we put that project in here for next year. What we were going to do is we were going to do a piece of County Road 31 up here from 23 over to 2. But that's still under detour or quasi detour when 23 is not going to be done. And what I'm recommending to the board is do it in 25 versus 24 of that piece of 31. Let all the Highway 23 traffic get done. Let all the people get back to what they're doing. Go in there and do 31 from there. And then we would also do that. There's a little piece of 31 from 23 into New London. We would do it all at once and just do all of 31 in 2 years, or in 25, not 24. And in lieu of that, we would do this piece of 4 on the east side of Green Lake. So that would be, if you look at your 5-year program and you compare it to this, that would be the only change. So other than that, pretty much routine. Our goal is to get the box culvert extended at the Middle Fork. We would do a little bit of paving on County Road 1, and we also threw the bridge replacement in there on the one that we just let. The reason that it's in there is because we would also allow either this fall or next year for construction for that bridge, just because of supply issues. Any questions on that? What's not shown is the striping. We didn't show any striping on here.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mel, I appreciate the emphasis, if you will, on some of the repaving projects within the city of Wilmer. I take more calls on streets than I do probably anything else. And of course, in most cases, there's not anything I can do about it. But in this case here, like you say, we're taking care of a number of different projects. Now, for the folks who live along these routes within the city of Wilmer, none of this is assessed to them, correct?
Okay, so that's a loaded
Help me out
question.
with
Okay, because we don't assess, but the assessment policy within the city of Wilmer has the opportunity to assess. And I don't know that they would do it. There'll be some municipal costs in this because they'll have, whether it's urban costs, whether it's streetlights, tree removal, We'll do curb and gutter, we'll do the ADA, but they might have sidewalk replacement. I mean, so I don't doubt that there could be some assessments, but it would be under a normal residential street assessment rate.
And those would typically not reach the level of if it was a regular city street and they were doing the work, you would think. Because they're not having to assess for the actual
Road.
materials, construction, that type of thing.
Right. I don't want to preface any assessment policies they may have, but I do know that, you know, we're taking a lot of burden of the cost by using, and the whole goal when we did the local option sales tax was to do projects like this so they get done without the burden of looking for a revenue source.
Sure. And I know because it's a hot topic, you know, for city residents as well as the city staff themselves and the city council. That I'm sure would be a topic of conversation that people will be really interested in. And is there any chance that, depending upon what they do with that assessment policy, that that they say, no, we don't want these done?
There's always the risk, you know, and I think what you would do there is the benefit cost has to be met, which is probably the most fundamental thing of what it's doing to your value. And in this case, I would think you could work with that so you would avoid that that issue of canceling the project. I mean, that would be our goal. Our goal here, and I think the county board at the time when we did the local option sales tax, was we did it for, I think, 2 or 3 major things. And one of them was for economic, was a large economic window in there of opportunity for us. And that's why we wanted to focus on the industrial park and one of the major thoroughfares to the largest community in this town. And we would hope we could work together, the public, the city, the county, and in this case, all the people that supported the sales tax to get this accomplished, because this would be huge, I think, for the city.
Yeah, and I think it's necessary. I look at every single one of these projects that are proposed for next year, and you can make just the strongest case for each and every one of them. I don't see anything but good coming out of this, and I'm hopeful that the city and the residents will see it that way as well.
Yep. Well, thank you for bringing that up, though, because it's always a topic. It's been a topic, I think, when Minnesota was started in 1849. Looking for
Commissioner
methods.
Byrne.
Mr. Chair, as long as we're on this topic, off the top of your head, what are some of the other roads that we share, say, with the city of Willmar? Because both District 1 and District 2.
Well, primarily what you see in the blue is pretty much the road we share. Yes, it is. It's 7th Street, the Fairground Road, if you will, coming up to Willmar Avenue. It's Willmar Avenue. And then 19th Avenue, one we just paved 2-3 years ago, is ours. And then County Road 5 across the airport
Okay.
are the main roads. Yep.
Any other questions? So in addition, do we have some bid lettings to?
We would recommend, we would take it to the next board meeting for
Okay.
award.
Okay. So anything else for Mr. Odens?
Okay, now we can maybe flip to the not above screen. I just want, and then I want to, you can just, we can just talk, and then we'll go one more, and then we'll be done. So the next slide, if you will, shows it's in our 5-year plan, we just isolated the 2024, okay? This shows the 13 revenue sources, the balanced budget that we have, and the two things that I would probably point out, and then I'm going to point out on the next one, but we're doing $24.8 million. That's the 20 million from the previous slide plus the 4.8, because we're going to do it. We'll encumber all the money So it will show up in your balance sheets as encumbered, but it's not going to show up as being expended as a cost. So it will, so that's that. And then the other thing is on the very bottom, we show a $60,000 in the black. Typically what we've done as a board for the last 9 years is we would go in the red because we would over program in case we got good bids. Well, we tried that for 2 years, didn't work. So we're going to scale that back. What we're trying to do is capture as much money, and we have a large program anyway, and so we're going to try and wait this little storm out of inflation cost, and hopefully they'll temper down to the 2 or 3% increase versus the 9%, 8 to 9% we've been seeing. So that's really all that is that's just showing you the revenue of what we're going to do for next year's work. Any questions on that? So then the next one, and if I could have this screen up above again. I just want to go over this a little bit. What we do is we graph our construction spending. And as you can see, for the first 5-6 years, we were running at 2%. That's the slope of this graph. The black line represents what we need to do just to maintain our system, not get ahead. It's just a complete pavement preservation thought process. The red line is if we want to kind of chip into getting ahead. So that's a $2 million gap that we try to get into with our work. We try to get these bars up into this gap. That's our goal. That's our goal. This represents a 2% increase annually, which is consumer price index, normal inflation. We got to the most recent years and we're looking at 8 to 9%. It has just shot up. And we thought for sure in 2024, 2023, 2024, it would slow down. It hasn't slowed down at all. And it's kind of scary because people are still spending money even though it's costing another $600,000 a mile to road. And that's why we scaled this construction back because it's expensive. So you can see where we are in 23 and 24. We're above these two lines, which is a good thing, primarily due to sales tax and some federal money. I think what I want to point out here, though, is this piece right here where I put the line is 2.1 million is our levy. It's not on yours, but it's up on the screen. I just did this before I came up here. We're doing $24 million with a 2.1 levy. We're using our levy dollars to match the grants, federally and state, and roads that are not qualifying for other. And so there's where we are. The other thing I want to point out on here is you'll see these black diamonds. And if you look at your 5-year program, that's where the program is. If you look at the bars, you can see that we still don't have money to fill some of these where we program to keep up. So we got work to do to keep into that middle zone. But any questions on this? It's just a kind of an indicator of where we are. If you look at the left-hand screen, we started out at $8 million and we're up to now in 2024, $24 million. So it's gone up considerably. We're also into the zone of meeting our goals, but that's getting harder and harder to go every year on some of these.
Any questions for Mr. Odens? We still don't know yet what the impact of the new transportation funding will mean to the county, do we?
Actually, we do. We didn't bring it. We just got it the other day.
But it's probably not reflected on that.
It's reflected. It's not reflected. We don't. It doesn't start until 25 I believe.
Right.
It's reflected in here, but that's a very good point, because I was gonna bring that. But with indexing and stuff for gas, it actually was a 1-year delay. So it doesn't actually start. So we did reflect the money in here, and I think it's at the end of the indexing, it's $982,000 a year more, is what I believe where it was,
And so
$1 million.
when Jeremy says it is reflected, so that means that bar that got up between your two lines got as high as it is because of the new money?
Yeah, you can see what we did over, if you can, oh, that's right, that's fine. Oh, if you look, these lines right here, you can see that this was a state aid advance. But you can see where it is here, and then how it went like this. You can see that the state aid did go up.
But those blue bars to the right side of the page, let's say those last 4 years or 3 years, 26, 27, 28, already reflects the newest transportation fund.
Yes, that's a very good point, yes. We got it in here, he just did it, in fact.
So even with that, it looks like in 2028, we're going to be, unless we identify some new funding, we're going to be significantly short
Yes,
of getting into that.
half.
Yep.
Yep. And so
Costs
what,
go up, even 26 and 27 may drop below that goal line there.
so, yeah, if you look at this, all this up here is competitive bidding for the most part. We got some sales tax in here, but it's grants. And so some of this out here, some of those grants aren't even available yet. And
But they
so,
may be.
right, what I'm getting at is it's, the day never ends, and you always got to look at things, and there's always, and so the money is starting to be around. It's competitive. It's always competitive, whether it's LRIP grant money, federal money. It's not a dependable source. Our main source is levy, county state aid, and then outside sources. We have sales tax in there, which is huge, but we do depend on an aggressive approach for getting grants. Any questions on?
Nope.
All right. So number 1 and number 2 are good. You're good. So it's a summary of what we did that we're doing this year. Well, maybe what I should do is I should ask the board if, I don't know, the administrator, I don't know that we need a motion because you're not going to do the budget till later, but we would like kind of a concurrence on what we want to do so that some of the surveys and utility letters and open houses, this stuff needs to get started. So is this generally what you concur with?
Fellow board members? It seems like a logical approach to me. I mean, keep it going on so that we're making improvements, but staying within the budget.
Yeah, no fatal flaws. So then we'll just get rolling. Yep. And then we can always adjust, but I mean, I'm just saying that as a general rule, I just want to get concurrence from this body. All right, the third one then for me is in the 2023 budget process, 1 year ago today, we approved to buy a tandem snowplow. And we need to do at least 1 or 2 tandem snowplows a year. It got approved. We all know there's the chip issue and there's supply chain issues. And so dealing with the vendors, they said that due to the backlog of these trucks, we won't even take an order because it doesn't matter because there's so many backlogs. So what we're left with is $302,000 in the 23 budget that literally cannot be ordered. Does that make sense? We could defer it for 2 or 3 years and do it again. So what we did is there's a couple things that aren't maybe perhaps routinely replaced. One of them's a mower, and one of them is a Pro Patch hot mix trailer. So my recommendation to this board is to substitute, since it's $146,000, it's not something we would just probably administratively do. It's more of a capital budget discussion. Would be to substitute taking the tandem money and buying the patching trailer and the mower and do that flip. We would still be $82,000 in the black or ahead.
And the rationale is that when these would be needed to be replaced, they're already replaced, so that money that would be in the budget would then be used for that.
But the Pro Patch trailer isn't in a regular replacement schedule. So we look for, if we have a good winter, we look for sometimes like, when can we slip some of these things in? Because the condition of this, the frame's starting to crack, and we've used it quite a bit this year. I mean, it seems crazy, but any discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mel, just to clarify for the folks out there, these are pieces of equipment that are needed anyway. It's not that we're just taking money that we can't spend this year and spending it on something else just because we can. These are actual needs that we have out there.
Yeah, our trailer, the patching trailer is 24 years old. The frame is, and so we use it pretty much every year. It's just a utility piece of equipment that's keeping the roads smooth, and we use it all the time. It's just not in a systematic replacement. So yes, it's very well needed to be
Right.
replaced.
It's not a frivolous thing
No,
or
no, no.
anything like that.
No.
We're just taking care of another need since we can't take care of the other one.
Yep, that's correct. So the action I would look at is to allow the switch and revise the budget accordingly, probably would be the action.
So would you prefer a motion on that?
I think we should have
So
a
I'd
motion.
entertain a motion on that adjustment of the budget.
I will so move the, to allow the adjustment in that capital improvements plan.
So Commissioner Gardner moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
So the last thing I've got is a settlement agreement related to the Wilmer Y. We're working through all our punch list items between all the entities, the state, the county, the city, and Burlington Northern. And one of the punch list items involves some pipeline licenses. It involves some tiling, and it involves some dirt, soil that they placed on our property that we need to come to terms and agree on condition and what's on it. The overall settlement agreement, it's only 82 pages, but the main settlement agreement, my recommendation would be to authorize the chair and the administrator to sign on behalf of the county for consideration. And then the two subsets within the settlement agreement, one is the licensing for the main large drain pipe, 30-inch pipe that go under the railroad. And then the other one is the soil pile that I've been working with them directly on. And so my recommendation would be maybe perhaps once I'm satisfied for those two, that I would sign those. And then, but the overall arching settlement agreement would be the administrator and the board chair. So let me explain. So that would be the action I'd be looking for later. So the first one, what's in your packet, the pipeline licensing is relatively routine. It's a no-cost thing. It's just, we have to survey the coordinates, fill out a licensing, and it's a no cost. They're going to give us the license just so it's recorded, so they have it in their records and we have it in our records. That's all it is. The city of Wilmer adopted or approved theirs last night, and MnDOT, I believe, did theirs last week. So we would be the third party to settle ours. So just quickly focusing on the soil placement agreement. They put about 50,000 yards of soil on the southern part of this project. Basically, the contractor just did it. And so there was no record that they could do it. And so we're just cleaning up this punch list thing that it is now going to be our material at for $1, just because it's the transfer of the document. And they did all the lab reports of the material. And as also agreement with that, they're going to remove the trees, the demo, and any rubble that's on here. And what it would do for us is we get this material and we would use it when we do our 55 bridge. So that's probably the most high-level, basic explanation of this dirt. But within that, there's always the 3, 4, 5 pages that go along with this for disclaimers and indemnification. And then if you look on the very last one, it shows you where the soil pile would be. So it's good material. It's basically topsoil. It's very good topsoil. It's right through the cornfield. And so my recommendation would be to authorize the chair and administrator to sign the settlement agreement on behalf of the county.
So you've heard Mr. Oden's recommendation to accept the settlement agreement and authorize the chair and administrator with? Did you say the administrator or you to sign?
No, the administrator.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion for that.
I'll so move.
Commissioner Gardner moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Berg seconds. Any discussion? Looks like we're getting to the end of a big, long process here, and good to hear. So, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have
Anything
nothing.
else?
I have nothing more.
I thought
We
there
are-
was something that was announced on July 11th you might want to touch on briefly. Corners of
Oh, the
Commerce.
quarters of commerce. Mr. Chair, members of the board, late October, early November, we've been working with the partners, all the partners, whether it's city, county, township, the state, on the New London safety intersection. And Roger and myself, were involved with a panel that when the J-turn was kind of a public outcry against that J-turn. That's when this group that MnDOT put together. And so we kind of came to a conclusion that we should really chase some extra money. And so the county board was very supportive of, because we have an integral part of this, our County Road 40 would tie into this intersection. And staff and myself were a long ways into realigning 40. We had the design pretty much done. We are platting it. We had met with the landowners, and then this all came to be. And so there was a lot of support on our end as a county board. And so they authorized me to go after some corridors of commerce money. It's a special fund that was created in 2013, 10 years ago, to address commerce. It's corridors of commerce. And so we figured that this would be an appropriate project because it's got safety issues and it's Highway 23, which is an interregional corridor. And there's a lot of commerce from Duluth down to Sioux Falls or even further southwest. And so we applied for it and we were able to secure $33 million based on our application. And so we feel good about that. And so MnDOT's looking to do a kickoff meeting here soon, and there'll be more discussion at this body on how we navigate through the grant system. So that's it.
Thank you. And I would just make a comment. There still seems to be some frustrating perception out there that the county, and particularly perhaps you and I, were pushing pretty hard for a J-turn. And the public needs to understand that initially when that J-turn was proposed, we didn't have any real options. The group, the engineering firm that did the study, came up with several options for the money that we had available. This was the option, best option for it. The bridge, which everybody wanted, certainly, would not have happened had not, number one, we applied, but even before that, the Minnesota Senate Transportation Committee approved $130 million extra dollars for the corridors of commerce. Would have never happened without that. And in addition to that, that third ring that they created put this application at pretty much the top of the list. And so those things wouldn't have happened. We'd be looking at a roundabout if it hadn't been for that. People need to understand that at the time until this took place, that was our option. So thanks for all the hard work you did. Thanks for everybody who supported the application, including all the businesses in the community, the local units of government, the public, and even those with the petition had a role in this. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, that brings us to the conclusion of our regular agenda items. So I'm going to start our report outs this time with the administrator. And then we'll go to Mr. Berg and we'll go back and forth.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a ton to report on. I've been really working on the 2024 budget. I'm meeting with the chair and the vice chair next Wednesday afternoon. It'll be a lengthy meeting. And then we will plan to present the preliminary budget at the August 15th meeting. Like I've said, along with that meeting, we'll go over some opioid dollars on how we'll be using those, along with the ARP dollars. So that will be, we'll do our regular board meeting in the morning and a budget workshop in the afternoon of that day. So if you want to book the whole day on August 15th, you might want to do so. Like I said, County Attorney Baker, Sheriff Tullifson, and Tammy Jo Lieberg and I have been working on how we're going to utilize our opioid dollars, along with how we can apply for different opioid grants. DHS has rolled out really hefty dollars with opioid grant dollars, and so we are working on applying for one of those, and so we'll keep you informed on that. Along with, I have been working with Andy Thorson, the facilities maintenance director, on some building needs, some deferred maintenance, not necessarily capital improvement projects, but how do we keep all of our buildings up to date, and how can we structure that on a year-to-year basis? And so I was reviewing your committees, and the board as a whole reviews the building projects, but I would like, if it was the chair and the vice chair, or at least two commissioners, to start working with Andy and I on some of these building projects that we will be proposing into a phased approach. So if that's, you can just let me know, but we'll start consistently having those meetings probably in August, September, and then moving forward and working on an ongoing plan. But that's all I have.
All right. Mr. Berg.
Okay, Mr. Chair, thank you. I only had 2 meetings, and the first meeting we're going to talk about is the Community Corrections Advisory Board. And I was on that with, as I mentioned before, with Commissioner Emdek. And as we heard Tammy Jo's presentation, I really don't have much more to add to it than those issues that she presented and talked about that we went into more detail last week on. Also, I had a CCT meeting and in Litchfield, and things, the new director was there, and things are moving forward there, and we got the budget settled, and Commissioner Dwayne Anderson is on that committee as well, and he probably has some things to add to it too, but basically not too much to report on that. One committee I wasn't on, but I went to, was a Family Promise ribbon cutting for that new program, and several other commissioners were there as well. I never thought we'd see something like that in our community, and it's really pretty exciting to see that happening. So otherwise, that was it.
All right, Commissioner Dwayne Anderson.
Okay, let's see, I had a few meetings. I guess one of my more notable ones was the CCT meeting, Community Transit. We met with the new, the meeting had the new director there, which is Amy Nealand, and she seems to be, she's got a full plate. So basically, we've received 1 new bus. We're waiting for 7 more. We maybe receive 3 buses by the end of fall. And then hopefully the remaining 4 will be here by the end of March. And we're really going to be excited if we get all them because we really need new buses. There's some buses with a lot of issues. They do not send a bus out if they do not believe it's safe. But they're really have a lot of miles on them. They are, however, they've hired some new part-time drivers, and they're going to be starting some evening and weekend routes in the area. So that was pretty much that. Then on the 10th of July, I attended a EDC broadband meeting. And of course, I'm sure the news is already out there, but East Lake Lillian Township, Lake Elizabeth Township, and Harrison Townships were awarded the grants to get high-speed internet, which is fiber optic to the homes. And the people in those areas are very excited to hear that when they hear that news. And they are we're going to start looking at new projects. Hopefully we can work with the providers soon to get more. And there was a huge project awarded to Vibrant for Stearns, Meeker, and the northeastern part of Candiac County. So that's pretty much all that I have. At the end of the day here today, I'm going to go start my journey down to Texas to go to a NACO conference. So hopefully I make it.
Thank you. For context, he's got 4 young boys that'll be traveling with him.
Yeah.
Commissioner Dale Anderson.
My one meeting that I had this couple weeks was the Historical Society. They got a lot of summer programming that's going on, different things that some school groups are coming out and seeing. And basically looking for people to come and visit and see all the historical stuff that's there. It kind of amazed me how much stuff they have in them buildings. And they're looking at doing a remodel and a little bit of fixing up of the Sperry House. It needs some maintenance, and they're looking at some grants for that. Trying to get some money for that to do a little repairs. Otherwise, things just keep deteriorating on that too. But they will have a booth at the county fair again this year. So they have stuff planned for that. They'll be in the log cabin. So if you want to stop in and visit them there, that would be appreciated. Them were kind of the big things. So
Very good. Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Berg already mentioned the grand opening for the Family Promise Shelter, which you were at as well. And that is going to be a tremendous facility, serving up to 9 families at a time. And this is a program that basically had been housed in about 10 area churches over the past number of years. And now they have a facility of their own. And it is a very welcome and much needed facility. And it does not cover the entire need that's out there when we're addressing homelessness in Candiac County. But it is a fabulous start. And that's one of those lather, rinse, repeat type of things that potentially there's some opportunity for other transitional housing projects, and there's already some conversation with some other area entities about that. So that's pretty exciting. I was virtually attended a State Community Health Services Advisory Committee Executive Committee meeting in lieu of Commissioner Leeser over in Chippewa County. EDC Joint Powers. An interesting meeting that I was at was the MnDOT put with their Highway 12 resurfacing and reconfiguration proposal, basically through Highway 12 within the city limits, city of Wilmer, basically starting at about where the old Domino's was on Highway 12, Litchfield Avenue, and then running through the downtown and out to about 10th Street. And they have several different proposals for that, but essentially they're going to create one lane in each direction with a center turn lane. And they're talking about eliminating a couple of stoplights, enlarging and widening sidewalks in that area. I think that's perhaps a good thing to do with the new Block 25 loft project at or near completion right now. Let's see what else. SHAC is going to be holding their annual retreat for SHAC membership, and that's going to be here in Wilmer on the 28th and 29th of September, being held being held at the conference center, and looking forward to having probably a couple hundred folks out for that. And that'll be some strategic planning. Of course, the long-range goal is to make sure that no matter where you live in the state of Minnesota, that everybody has the same access to base public health care within the state. And that's a long-term project that started when Commissioner Madsen was still on this board. And that's been ongoing for a number of years, but we have a 50-year-old system that needs a refresh. And so that's what those efforts are all about, and that work continues. Want to remind everybody that Rockin' Robins is going on again tonight, the second of 4 Tuesday nights here in July, and I suppose the last one is in August, and just encourage everybody to come out and enjoy that. That's all I have.
Very good, thank you. And the advantage of going last is just about everything was covered so far. So EDC, the community corrections, family promise, but I did attend virtually a NACO Community Economic Development and Workforce meeting, which there's a lot of people on that. I'm on that national committee, or workforce, I should say, not as an officer or anything like that, just a participant. I think several of you are as well. So that's all I had. I just wanted to remind us about upcoming events. Won't be that far away. We got our notice for registering for fall policy. So get that on your calendar. And what else have we got going on? We usually do our calendars at this point. Oh, the transportation fly-in is in September. Yeah, we should be thinking about that. And what else is there? Well, the annual conference will be down in downtown Minneapolis this year for the last time, but I think they're already taking registrations for that. So, all right, if there's nothing else, we will stand adjourned.